This week's review, Jeet Kune Do Kickboxing. Hi everyone, my name is Joe, and welcome to my channel, Fighting Words, the Martial Arts Library. On this channel, I review martial arts books and talk about other martial arts related subjects. This week I'm going to be reviewing Jeet Kune Do Kickboxing from 1986 by Chris Kent and Tim Tackett. So both these gentlemen are very well known in the martial arts world, in the Jeet Kune Do world in particular, and both trained with Dan Inosanto beginning in 1973. Now this book itself is focused again on basically the kickboxing phase of Jeet Kune Do. There's a sort of an intro and history section that, among other things, it mentions that Bruce Lee's kickboxing phase began in 1965, but really began to flourish in 1967, and talks about how the actual kickboxing became a bigger and bigger part of what was taught in Jeet Kune Do. Now, the first chapter itself shows various hand strikes, all the basics that you could imagine, including variations and mistakes and like little intelligent bits on usage. For instance, they show, the finger jab, but they also mention like, okay, don't rely on this to be a fight stopper, use this to set up your punches. And then there was a whipping jab, which comes out in a straight line, but then whips back, and this is a Jeet Kune Do thing, but they point out that this is going to make you vulnerable because you're taking your hand out of position as it retracts. You're vulnerable to this side, so you better make sure you hit your target and that you're not open for counters. After that, it goes on to mitt work, include how to feed different strikes, and also a few different reaction drills for training your hands. Following that is a section on kicks. They make a point to differentiate the Jeet Kune Do kicks from the formal or classical kicks. So they will contrast, like, okay, in a formal kick, you're gonna lift your leg up, bring your heel back, and then kick it out, then bring it back and put it down. Jeet Kune Do, we just kick straight from the floor. I appreciate what they're getting at. I will say that when it comes to practical application, there's not as much of a distinction as they seem to be trying to make. Also in this section, they go over the variations of kicks, including footwork. For instance, on the rear round kick, they'll show a few variations, depending on how much hip you want to put in it, which will also depend on your opponent's range. After that is a section on how to train the kicks using equipment, including things like focus mitts and the use of the kick shield. After that is a section on combinations, and they will show a variety of combinations both on the mitts and the kick shield, and they will classify this by whether it's hands only, or if you begin with your hands and end with your feet, if you begin with your feet and end with your hands, or whether it's kicks by themselves in combination with no hand techniques. So that makes it very easy to follow along with. Following that is a chapter on progressive indirect attack, which is one of Jeet Kune Do's 5 ways of attack. Progressive indirect attack means that you begin an attack aimed for a specific target, and then you change the direction of your attack, or you change the target of your attack, the nature of your attack, without retracting it first. So instead of like faking a jab and then throwing a real one, you might start to move toward the body, but then finish up at the head. After that is a section on defense, which covers a lot of different defensive tools, including tools against kicks, and punches, which leads into defense and counter drills with the focus mitts. And, these guys will cover, everything from like covering, shelling up to deflecting, various footwork evasions, upper body evasions. It's a pretty extensive section. After that, you get a brief chapter on attack by drawing. Now, drawing is, in this context, going like, look, my ribs are vulnerable, hit me there. And as the guy goes to hit you where you're vulnerable, based on what you've given him, you counter, because people are most vulnerable when they are actually attacking. So the section is brief, but I think it's important. Following that, there's a section with kickboxing drills, which also includes gait theory and tips on how to fight different opponents. So gait theory comes from, I think they get it from Wing Chun Kung Fu, the idea that the body is divided into various gaits, upper gate, middle gate, lower gate, as well as an inner gate and an outer gate. And using these reference points can help you understand the best offensive and defensive tools for a given situation. And of course, when they're going over different opponents, they're going over runners and jammers and all that stuff. So I like the fact that they included strategy in this section as well. And what are the pros of this book? I personally, as someone who has studied Jeet Kune Do, I really found the section on the history kind of interesting. But past that, in a more practical sense, in addition to being just generally very good for your fundamental strikes, I do like how they went out of their way to show how to hold the pads so that you can become a good trainer. So, a lot of people just sort of like, okay, punch my hand, and they have no idea what they're doing. But the section on how to feed different attacks, that's important if you're going to be holding for somebody else so that neither one of you screw up. As far as the cons go, not really a lot. The only thing I can think of, and this is just because of the time and place we're living in, I do wonder how this type of kickboxing would deal with modern, leg kick style kickboxing or modern Muay Thai. It is a very different style. The stances are a little bit different, the goals are a little bit different. I believe that they had been exposed to Muay Thai at this point, but I don't know, if they had taken a look at Muay Thai as a whole. And I know in particular, heavy on the lead leg with the toes turned in, that's sort of vulnerable to like the low round kick. So again, I do wonder how, if you decide to practice this style exclusively, are you in for a rude awakening when you face someone who's used to throwing, round kicks to the thigh? I don't know, but it could be a drawback. So, who would I recommend this to? Everyone. I guess not everyone necessarily, but like I said, it goes over very well, not just the technical side, but the strategic side of, just fundamental kickboxing, including kickboxing in a no rules environment where, you're allowed to slam your fingers into the guy's eyes, where you're allowed to kick the groin, or at least there are no restrictions against it. So, I think that this can help as far as understanding striking for maybe a self-defense scenario. Self-defense usually happens much closer, but you never know when self-defense can turn into a fight or vice versa. So if you do already practice a striking art, that's more oriented toward competition, and you want to get an idea about how to use the tools at your disposal and how to adjust them for self-defense, I think this can be helpful to that. Obviously, if you are a Jeet Kune Do student, this is a really good resource to have. This was written by, two of the guys who are most familiar with Jeet Kune Do as it was, at the time Bruce Lee was alive. So, yeah, just a really good resource. But anyway, that's all I have for this week, guys, and I'll see you next week. Thanks. Bye.